All right, hey guys, Kit here of Burn One with the Shadow vs. Evolve channel, joined as always with my boy
Hey, what's going on?
Dean here. So we're finally getting around to our tier list prediction. This is kind of like right after the weekend of release. We have down here archetypes of decks we believe that are going to be somewhat popular or be mostly played during this meta. We'll kind of explain them as we go along. But yeah, we're just gonna throw this up on a simple tier list, and then towards the middle or later into the season, we'll do what we did last time, which is we'll open up that chart to plot them around if you haven't seen the last tier list. Otherwise, we can just kind of jump into this one. So, I guess where do you want to start, Dean? We'll let you pick. Just
Oh, do we start at the bottom with the bats?
the bats.
Yeah,
All
we get
right,
the tier 4 out of the way. No use like dwelling on it too long. Get more
true.
time for the other stuff. So yeah, I think the bat package. Uh, can it even high roll? I mean, like the high roll is like what turn like 2 or 3. You manage to somehow get a bunch of bats on the board, and then you summon a Vania. That's like a 6/6 or something, and that's your maximum high roll.
Pretty much. Man,
And
I go ahead.
oh, I was gonna say like even the high roll is like weak to like any actual removal, right? But I guess like you could win some games. It's just not good at all. So yeah, I don't think it's even worth talking about. Just like a pure bat build.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So obviously we're talking about this Vayne bat build here, where it's like a abyss centric bat build. I'm like somewhere in between here. Like, I mean, like this is you can bring this to locals and do okay. You probably don't win the locals unless your locals is like one other person. I don't know if I want to say this is a complete meme, but there's definitely some stuff going on here that's like kind of cool. It's just the package is needs way more support, right?
Yeah, and it's just like the fact is the bats are like not good cards,
Yeah.
and yeah, like having cards that like want to have a ton of bats on your board is it. I don't think that's the secret sauce. It's like worse than fairies.
Yeah, in a weird way, you're right about that.
Yeah. It's not like I think everything. Oh wait, there's a roost on here.
Don't worry, Roos is going down. That's why I'm like, this is Roost for sure. We should just throw Roost in
Yeah.
here right now.
What
I think it's
Roost is
better than
like?
Roost.
Roost is as good as that
You
almost.
think so?
Roost can like when you play the Roost deck, your deck is like all bricks, but after you put down the Roost, like you can just randomly flip over Genesis like game, like right on 6, you could just like
Yeah.
kill your opponent. So like the Roost is like, yeah, I think it's about as good as the bats. Like I think you need about the same amount of luck to win with Roost. And actually, the Roost deck is kind of insane because like your deck is all bombs, right? Like, yeah, you
Hmm.
if you don't magically die by turn like 4, like 5 or so, you can just like start slamming down cards with Storm literally every turn,
Yeah,
and
it's
that's about as real as the bat deck.
yeah, you're probably right because both these decks kind of want like a weird high roll game plan. Like you can play like a more bat centric control like hybrid type of deck, right? But even that doesn't seem very powerful. Um, but Vampy as a card just like reads very good, but like just there's not enough good support around the bat archetype at the end of the day. It feels like even though we have this in tier 4, like maybe I could see like would say like maybe it could get into tier 3, but it's very down here. It's on the low end for sure. Next here we have Sword. This is one where the strategy, like at the end of the day, every deck of Sword is gonna play some amount of Leonidas usually. But this deck here, the strategy plays more into the Gunner Maid package of things, going into Pompous Princess and stuff like that, being able to search that out and being able to have a really good 1, 2, 3 curve that also summons another 1 drop, which is pretty cool. Um, I've been playing a lot of Sword, and it feels like any version of Sword is like really powerful. Uh, I would argue that this is like within tier 1. Maybe it's in tier point 1.5 if you're not very bought in on the Gunner Maid package of 1 drops and stuff, and the Pompous Princess. You agree with that, Dean? Or
Yeah, I mean, I think that like all builds of Sword, once the Leonidas banner sticks, I think you're pretty much in a good spot. The Pompous package, like you said, I think the big idea is that you're able to like Gunner Maid, like so, like you Leonidas on 6. You always try to do that. I
yeah,
don't know if you're on Olivia or not. I think Olivia is like pretty important just in case you go first.
Yeah, I think it is important in most lists.
But then you're able to go like 2 mana Gunner made, 3 mana Pompous. Pompous summons a 1-drop, and you're able to 1-drop as well. And that's 4 dudes on the board to go with your Leonidas Amulet. So you're able to get like the maximum value off of that and get +12/+12 across 4 bodies.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, it because of the nature of wanting to be able to hit on the Pompous Princess, you're playing a lot of you're playing a very low to the ground curve, but then you're also playing the cards, like all of the tutor cards, right? So you have like a lot of hand advantage coming throughout the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And like unlike the other more, I want to call it like traditional Leonidas builds that we'll look at after this, I feel like this version of the deck is very can easily go wide multiple times over and over again due to the package itself. Because not only do you have like this weird package of like Gunner Maid into Pompous Princess into a 1-drop, you still have Flora Fencer and Amelia as well as is a really good card that is comboed with this list as well. So it's always really good. My issue here though, I was like, I don't know, do we just throw this in tier 1? Because I almost feel like every sword list is like tier 1 worthy. What do you think, Dean?
Man, is the okay. Also, I am like kind of wishing we had a deck list for people as well. But it is what it is. The do you actually think it's that good into Haven? Like with all of the removal? Like if the Leonidas doesn't stick?
Into Haven, like I think Haven's already favored. I think if you're going to play sword and be able to like beat Haven, a lot of times you got to go the wide and low road type of route because that can push a lot of damage. The biggest weakness with Haven right now is that a lot of its healing tools that it wants to play are very small increment heals. So anything that can like go wide and hit for a lot of damage, usually early on, is very hard for Haven to ever eventually stabilize to like compete. So personally, I think the going wide option is very good against Haven, but I don't know if that's enough that would make it so like Haven still isn't favored, right?
Because like I guess if you have a bad matchup into the other tier 1 deck, doesn't that make you tier 1.5?
I guess so, but I feel like it's almost like a rock paper scissors thing going on in tier 1 right now. I guess
I know like if Leonidas resolves, you have like actually the best deck in the game.
Yeah.
But the problem is like a lot of decks aren't going to let you, and a lot of decks are tech for you. And unlike Aegis, right, where people can tech for you and you still just like absolutely stomp on them. If you like turn 6 Leonidas Evo and you can't trade him, or you turn 6 Leonidas and you do get him off, and then they execution it. I just feel like the deck. Now I know you've tested a lot more than me, right? But like I've only have a medium amount of games on this deck, but I felt like the deck was quite underwhelming when such a thing happened. But maybe I'm wrong.
I can kind of agree with this package being 1.5 because one of the weird things that has developed over like playing this list is that the idea of actually still playing Banner is like being floated right now because of how wide it goes, and like after your turn 3 play of building like a 4-person board, having Banner on 4 is still really powerful for this type of deck because you're going wide and you can push really hard really fast early. It's kind of like the chaos factor of the deck is if they do run Banner. But I can kind of agree too that like maybe the strategy isn't as powerful as like even straight up just Leonidas version of the deck.
But you're saying I think your argument here is right that if you're playing the old deck and you played down Banner, it kind of did elicit a response in some way.
Yeah.
And then it's just like you have like another Banner that's searchable, and between the two of them, if like one of them sticks, you get to win.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I can like respect. I haven't really tested that.
That's has been my experience so far. It definitely does feel strong. Out of all the versions of Sword so far I've played, this list actually has been the least amount of games I've played on. But those are the like, feelings overall I've been receiving from playing this. I should actually go back to test this more because it felt really good at the time. But Haven is just a weird problem child of the format, I feel like, right now.
Hmm.
Do you want to just talk about the straight up Leonidas version of the deck then, where it's all basically all in on Leo?
Well, I mean, isn't it? Except for the Gunner Mate, aren't you just like all in on the Storm package? And the idea is that if the Leonidas sticks, you're able to like Evo and Albert, or you're able to go like
Yeah.
Instead of like having this wide board that you get
Mhm.
to present throughout the entire game, it's kind of like more of just like the standard like Storm package, right? I'm guessing you're on Tsubaki, you're on Quick Bladers, and you're on just cards that like if a Leonidas sticks, you instantly push like 12 damage.
Yeah, so this is like the list I've been playing a lot more. This I personally think is tier 1 100%. Like
And I'm guessing this is like triple Novice Trooper, you're on
Yeah.
triple Quick Blader, yeah, you're
Yep.
on like probably
play
triple
the-
Tsubaki still. You're just like every card that says Storm is a good card.
Yep.
And then you have Leonidas.
Yep, basically. You don't play as many Tsubakis anymore. I think picking up Tsubaki is like dependent on your meta and your what you're going to do locally. But generally how this deck plays, I almost want to say this deck is almost like a combo deck, that it's also like an aggressive deck, because you have a lot of free storm damage out of hand, and you have such great advantage engines through all the searching that Sword does, and you can find specific pieces really quick that you need. I think it's called Advent Blader is the 4-drop that evos for 1, and you get to search 2 officer traits.
Yes.
A lot of time on 4, if you go second, you evo into that, it's a 5/5, so that's already like pretty good value. But on top of that, 90% of the time you're going to search out 2 novice troopers, which means at any point in the game after that, you always have at worst 6 storm damage your opponent has to think about. If you ever get a point where they stumble and you get the Leo banner on the board and they can't remove it, you immediately have 12 storm damage out of hand. That's not including obviously being able to play Albert as well is another potential 12 storm damage out of hand, like right after a Leo banner. So a lot of times, a lot of your games get to the point where you get your opponent to about 12 life, and then they have to play this weird dancing game where they have to play around Leonidas for the rest of the game, because you were be able to push them a little bit aggressively in the beginning to get them down to close to 12. And then because they're forced to play around Leonidas a lot, sometimes you can just get little extra pokes in there, and then it gets to the point where any storm damage out of hand that's like 6 damage or so will just end the game for you or put you so far ahead that they don't really have a way to come back. That's how I felt. There are decks that like probably destroy this deck completely, one of them being Haven, because it has some of the best answers to your opponent dropping Leonidas. Also, when Haven chooses the route of not playing as many followers and playing more of the removal package stuff only, it becomes even harder and harder for Leo to like even do anything in that matchup other than be like a huge body, and that's it. They basically almost never get the Leonidas resolve, I think is the banner's name, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see all that.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, so it's just like it's only like a few card difference, right, between the two packages, I'm assuming.
Yeah, pretty much. You're more built around like essentially kind of comboing off and always having that threat, whereas the Gunner Made package I feel is like low to the ground and pushes that really hard aggression early in hopes that you can basically not have to play Leonidas to win the game, but you can still always play Leonidas and present a big board after Leonidas turn of like you said 12 worth of stats on the board immediately, which is like really spooky because essentially every card in the Gunner Made build is almost like build your own Flora Fencer essentially. Yeah. All right. Next here we have, this is more like combo Burn Forest with the what's her name, Rose Queen or something.
Yeah, Rose Queen.
Yeah. This I have not as much experience as you have. I don't know how much of set 2 you've tested.
Ooh, man, my deck went in a negative direction. Nobody played that pile I put out there. I mean, there's got to be something. Rose Queen is a good card. Arya is a good card. Forest has good cards. How do we get the secret sauce that puts it all together? That's just the question. Where is the secret sauce? What cards do we need to put in the deck? Like, I think that Rose Queen is a fantastic card, and on paper should be beating quite a few cards, especially something like Aegis.
Yeah.
The other forest stuff though is all over the place. Like it's actually, I don't want to say it's horrendous because like I haven't like sat down and like grinded. Like I feel like this is the kind of deck that I need to just actually play with for a long time. Do we want to play the deer guy that puts like the thorn burst into the X area? Do we want to play? Do we even want to play Lily? Like honestly, there's like questions that we have about like what do we put in the Rose Queen package? Because currently I made my deck worse. I added new cards and my deck like probably fell 2 tiers in viability. Like it was like horrendous. Oh yeah, the dog that like White Wolf. Because it's like the question is, do we play White Wolf, right? A card like that, and then like Spell Chain, D-Shift, Rune, anything got Rhymewind, and the dog gets put on top of your deck, and you're like, that is like actually the most awful feeling I've ever had. And then like sometimes like you top check 4 and they're all bad, so it's like, is that part of the package? I think if we can figure out the package, it's like a good counter to Haven, and it depends on how much you value that. And I think that you could tech against Sword somewhat, but I always think that Sword is like good into Forest on paper, just because like you don't have a lot of quick removal. You have like the blank an attack card, but that's it.
Yeah.
But your actual quick removal is like kind of awful, minus execution. Like, execution is like mid. So I somewhere between 1.5 and 2, but like that's like if we can figure out a list, and I don't actually know what the list is. So
Yeah, I'm more inclined to put this in tier 2 for some of the like some of the same reasons you said, but also like we did I did some testing against Forest. I never actually played Forest myself, but before release, I played a few games into it, and every complaint has always still been the same since day 1 of set 1, which is Force is really busted. If you can draw the cards in the right order of needing them, it still feels like that has to happen for you to like really pop off, and make sure you get your Arya and then your Rose Queen, because if you can get that combination of cards off, usually you win the game shortly after the turn you play Rose Queen, because the burn damage is very significant. As far as like the Sword matchup into the deck, I've only played against it a few times. It's felt like either they were able to combo off because Sword took longer to set up the lethal, and then Sword loses, or Sword just like rolls over Forest. That's what it feels like. And I do think like what a lot of people have been talking about, and I'm kind of in agreement with them too. I think Forest should have a good Haven matchup, as long as they draw very well into like the exact things they need.
Yeah, well, like we got Lily, which actually can add Pixie Follower, so you can add the Ari to your hand. You can't get the Rose Queen. So then the question is like, do you play the dog to top check into the Rose Queen? And then the question is, how many dogs do you play? And honestly, when you put the dog on the board, you realize it's terrible. It's like every complaint you have about Leonidas potentially being bad is like amplified to 10. Yeah, it's like infinitely worse. And then there's like other random stuff like the Rhymewind bouncing it to the top of the deck that make it like horrendously bad, like actually just ungodly bad. It was but there's something there, and I just don't know what it is, because there's a lot of problems with like what cards do you include. And like you said, there's like were they on Titania's Sanctuary? That card reads insane, but you have to see it, and then when you have to see it, you have to put all these fairy generators in. Like what the cards, figuring out the perfect 40, I mean, it feels like the kind of thing that like you look back on, like you revisit the format in like 3 years, and then you go, okay, now we have infinite time to solve it, right? But right now we have 2 months, and 2 months might not be enough to figure out with like as like wonky as the class is, and is like, and how greedy you want to be with it.
Yeah, I can agree with that completely. All right, next card we have up here, this Forte here is going to represent straight up Ramp Dragon. This set, Ramp Dragon, basically plays the same. I don't think it got much support really built into like Ramp anymore, because they went more towards the discard package. So a lot of the tools we got went into discard. There are some really neat tools that like out aggro even more which is what's his name? Sig? Is that his name? I forget. I think he's the four drop.
Siegfried?
Yeah, is he the 4-drop?
Bro, I thought you liked Fate.
I'm sorry. Listen, I don't know what what that card name is in this, but
Stand in my way and I'll cut you down.
that card
That's
is
okay.
like a 3-for-1, which is really good into aggro, and the meta right now is very aggressive. So like you playing some amount of that is always going to be good. It's also really good in removing Soul Dealer, which we'll talk about later in Abyss, and that being a tier 1 deck means it's good into that, which is pretty solid. I think Ramp Dragon. This is my thoughts. Let me know what you think, Dean. After this, is that I think the deck is a 1.5 tier. I think it still has the same power that Dragon always has. It has Forte Evo Face, which is good. It has Genesis Dragon. Ramp is always going to be very strong as long as we have good payoff cards like Forte and Genesis Dragon and other things like that to play at the top end there. But generally the deck is the same. Like you got some like minor tools that might change. You might like move around depending on what your local meta is like, but it looks exactly the same.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much the same. But isn't the meta a little more hostile to something like Genesis now?
It is, but at the same time, I think Genesis is always a card people have to think about because it just straight up says I deal 10 damage to you and win the game immediately if you're not careful.
It's true.
And I think most people shouldn't be on multiple Genesis Dragon anyway, unless I guess they're playing Discard Dragon. I think that's the only type of list that could benefit from playing multiple Genesis Dragon. I think every other list should be playing like at 1 at most. 2 is like really pushing it for me, and I would never play 2 personally unless I had like the discard package to work with. Anything else? Yeah.
I mean, I think it's about right. It's like, do you not like feel consistency issues from this list? Like this game plan of Forte like face is like, yeah, it's cool, but don't you feel like a little bit of consistency issues from it? That's always been my argument about it because like Forte's 7 and 7's a lot, but it's also not enough.
The issue is like any matchup. Okay, so like Forte having aura is the stupid part, right?
Yes,
and, obviously Storm. And so like any of the top tier decks that have answers to Forte, like Forte just gets to say no. And I think that's what literally keeps Dragon alive at this point. I think if Forte didn't exist as a card in Dragon, even with 3 Shenlongs, I think the deck would not be as good as it is. I think it would be tier 2 or even tier 3 at that point. That's my thought process because Forte is just so annoying to deal with no matter what.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
All right. Do you think can you kind of agree with 1.5? I definitely don't think it's tier 1. I do think it does.
Oh no, I don't think it's tier 1 either. So I think I agree with 1.5.
Okay, yeah, because I can agree. Like sometimes in Dragon you have to draw in a certain order because you just end up drawing your heavy stuff at the end, especially if you're playing ramp and you're like, cool, I drew 3 Fafnirs and like 2 Genesis or whatever off the top. I lose this game because I didn't do anything for 3 turns, right? All right, next here I have more Kaguya-based Haven. The payoff on this is usually still people are probably playing some amount of Aegis, probably like 2 or 1 or whatever to get to that end game. But this is like more follower-centric leading up to that plan instead of going the full control 1-for-1 trading to get to Aegis. This list I have very little playtesting on. This is the list we're starting to test now. I think this list is good enough that it's probably 1.5. Maybe it's tier 2. I don't know how you feel. I don't know how much Kaguya you've messed around with like all that amulet package stuff and things like that.
Back when I tested set 2, the only deck I played had Kaguya in it with like Death Sentence and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it was just part of the deck because it's such a good card. Like I honestly didn't know there was a.
I think the more popular version of Haven actually plays a lot more into the Kaguya stuff as well as followers instead of like the version I'm currently playing right now, which is just a straight up like all the removal packages plus like the good followers that get us to get to the end game, and I win strictly off of Aegis. I feel like this version playing the more followers plays into like Dragon a little bit better and plays into like everything else like a little bit more like aggressive on board instead of like just winning out through Aegis alone. Like Aegis is still kind of like a win condition in this deck, I feel like, but it doesn't necessarily need Aegis to win the game, unlike the version I'm currently playing.
Huh. I guess this is like one without like seeing the actual full differences. I can't really comment fully. Like I don't even know like how many card differentials this is between this and like yours. Is it like 4 cards, 5 cards?
It's significantly different.
Oh.
Yeah, so like the whole game plan is like how it gets to the end game is way different. Is I think it's definitely more board based strategy, whereas this version of the deck is like I'm just gonna tell you no for as long as possible until I set up the like one turn kill package, basically.
I will agree with your placement as I do not know what it is.
Okay, yeah. As far like right now, I'm like in between here. I think it leans more towards 1.5 generally, but yeah.
I think any Haven deck is probably better than any Force deck at the moment.
Probably. Next here is Elena Haven. So this is Heal Haven.
Hell yeah.
If this was digital, S tier, right? But here we are.
There's no way this deck is as bad as people say it. I mean, like, it's unsearchable. It's an unsearchable banner. It's a banner that happens every turn. So
yeah.
Okay. Healing, good. Aegis, good. Aegis, bigger Aegis, even better. Think about Pascal. We've heard people say Pascal's insane. Quick, +2/+2. What about quick entire board +1/+1? That's what Dark Offering is once you Elena. Like, there has to be something where this is not tier 4. There has to be something where this is not tier 4. Can we at least put this tier 3?
I want to believe, Dean. Trust me. I want to believe. We'll
put this at tier 3, and if I'm strong enough, I'll move this up to tier 1.5 after I fucking slaughter people with it. But
otherwise, it'll be back down here.
Yeah, I'm willing to put in reps with that over Forest at the moment because Forest got me a little sad.
So I've played against this deck a couple times. In testing, we decided it was not even worth playing anymore to figure out if it's good or not. I can tell you though, like once you get Elena on curve and you start getting a sticky board, the board gets really annoying to deal with. Unfortunately, like when I was playtesting into this, like every deck I played had some kind of board wipe that was more than enough to handle the board before it got too big. But it is very funny watching all like a bunch of like 3/3s suddenly become 6/6s in like just like 3 turns, or like not even 3 turns. Like they pump on their turn, then pass to you. They Dark Offering, they get pumped again. They come back to themselves and they heal again, and it gets pumped again. And then they're starting to swing in for like with these 6/6s is pretty funny. But it very feels inconsistent. Like the deck is very good if you can curve into Elena. If you don't, you get sad. I think the meta right now too is really rough where like curving into Elena on 3 is hurting yourself somewhat, because if you play into Abyss, they're just like, look at all my followers that just go face really fast, and then I'm like my turn 4 soul dealer. You have to deal with this now too. So you can't.
You could do something as simple as like playing the heal package and then like cogging it out on like 6, right?
Or on 5, you mean? Because Kage's on 5. I can pull it out.
Well, she Evos, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, she Evos for 2. Yeah. I mean, that is an option. I don't think we really tested it enough to be like, is a turn 5 Elena good enough? But
in a format with
with Bahamut. That too. And I think how aggressive everything is like if your deck can't handle the first 3 turns of the game and like take little to no damage, then I think you're already starting your game off behind just because of how aggressive I think this meta is. But I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe this meta develops more and in the English speaking area gets like less aggressive.
I'm agreeing with you that this deck is probably bad, but I'm just saying I want to believe it's better than Bats and Roost.
I want to believe
that's my argument.
Listen, the Booster 7 spoilers made me believe this card is going to be really good, so I'm buying the premium versions of this for a year from now to be able to play it.
Hell yeah!
All right, the next deck here is Discard Dragon. I've played against like a all-in Discard Dragon, and I've played with and against like a hybrid version of Discard Dragon. Have you played with this at all yet, Dean?
That is the list that I played. I hadn't played like just set 2 with like just normal ramp cards. I played Disco a little bit.
What are your thoughts on it?
Many.
I want to see if like we align from our testing or not.
Is it like Elena but better, where if you see your 3-drop amulet, the deck is like actually insane? And the more of the amulet you see, the better it is. But I mean, you get a lot of like really weird clunky hands, and the cards just kind of filter, but they're shitty cards. So you like play this 2 mana draw drop, and you lost a card in hand to put down a shitty card on board. And if the amulet wasn't already on the board, then like you're kind of inting. That's the way I thought when I played it. Some of the hands were awful, like actually horrendous. But then other times you have like double amulet on the board, and like that draw drop is insane, but for the wrong reasons. So, oh, I don't know. That's like kind of what I thought. I like that Aldos as a finisher. Like you just dump your hand and like burn out through an Aegis. I like that part.
Yeah.
But you can do that in normal Dragon.
Yeah.
So is that about right?
Basically, I'm kind of in agreement with everything you said. After playing it more and playing against it, I think at first I was like, this deck is garbage. It's like some tier 3 garbage. But the more I played it, I think it's actually somewhere between here and here. I think it just depends on like what meta you're running into, because at the end of the day, Forte is just a really good card. Like there's nothing you can do about that. But now that you get this discard package, as long as you see, like Dean said, you get I think it's Draconic Rite, I think is the name of the amulet. If you can see that and develop it as soon as possible onto your board, because what's really good about this is that unlike Elena's amulet, this one also self-procs when you play it. So you can get the burn 2 immediately. So if you need to answer like a 3-drop on board that's like a X2 or whatever, or even a 2-drop like a mini Soul Devil that was played, you can answer it by just playing this. You heal 1 and then you ping it for 2. What's very annoying about this is that the way Discard Dragon and like the hybrid version of it play, you just get like random pot shots of 2 to your face like 3 or 4 times in a game, and that's more than enough to constantly put you in range of like double Forte death, Forte into another.
Okay. I'm not disagreeing with the Forte part. My entire thing was, did you feel the like hand problems, and did you feel maybe it was like the list I had, but it's like, right, you put down Dragomancer's Rite, and yeah, you proc it the first time. I do like that the more Dragomancer's Rites you have, the better. Like it's not like some of the other cards where like you play 3 because you want to see it, but then when you see multiples, you feel bad.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you see multiple, yeah, it's good, but don't you feel the like all of the cards are like really shitty cycles?
Yes, except I really like the Dragon Tamer a lot. I think that card's really good. That
was the one I was talking about.
Yeah. That was like the best discard card in the deck, I think, unless you count what's that other card from set 1? Trail of Light, Shenlong, obviously, but
you have Trail of Light. Trail of Light.
So,
but like,
my experience, I think, is similar to what you're saying. Is like there's a lot of games where your hand will just disappear like in like 4 turns, and you're like down to like 2 cards. But then there's odd situations where you're in that like 2-card hand, and then like a random like Shenlong off the top into a Trail of Light ditch into like weird scenarios like that becomes. I've had that happen multiple times, so which makes me think like this is like not necessarily always going to happen, but it comes up enough that it keeps your hand size usually around 4 to 5 for most of the game, which has been pretty good overall. And if you play into like a slower deck like Haven, you usually have like a ton of hand to work with, depending on the scenario. I definitely think like hybrid dragon is better than just straight up ramp dragon, but I think like the aggressive package of discard, like if you go like the full aggro discard dragon, I don't think it's as good as your other aggro options in this meta, but I mean you could still play it if you like it, right?
Yeah, I mean I can get behind it. Get behind it.
My issue right now though with it is I don't know if it's actually tier 1.5 or 2. I know some people have it up here as tier 1, because I know when I looked at the stats in Japan for their GPs and stuff, it was played a lot. And I don't know if that was part of the reason was everyone just owned Dragon and they were having issues getting enough product everywhere, because I think this was still around the time where stores were selling out constantly over and over and over again, right? I don't know. Do you remember that time, Dean, when you were buying the set 2 stuff?
Well, I just kind of bought boxes on eBay. I didn't really because I think like Ami sold out back then.
Yeah.
So as far as like actual testing and knowing how the meta developed, I'm not too sure about it. I legitimately think it's better. I know I was like talking about the hand thing, but yeah, like Trail of Light discarding and drawing deeper, and the fact that you're not because you have like actual filter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because like the normal Forte deck is like you drag an Oracle, then you kind of like try to find your like 3 Fortes and like a little bit extra face damage, and that's like that's like half of your deck, and you play like these big bombs. Well, this is like 3 mana. You put down the Dragomancer's Right, you pop a card. Then like next turn, if you have a second one, you put it down, or you put down like these other cards. You have a lot of cards to deal with the board while also like staving off. The only problem I had was with the consistency of like where the hand sometimes just like disappears in like a turn.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that too. I think
But
one thing, sorry to cut you off, but I think one thing that's really cool about the deck is because if you play like 3 Dragon Flutes, um, there are times where you set up like on your turn 5, you ditch this Dragon Flute with the Dragon Flute you already have on field, to generate 2 dragons into your EX area, and then next turn you generate a 3rd dragon, and for 6 mana you just get 12/9 worth of stats on the board immediately, and they all have rush. And sometimes like if your opponent at that point of the game is like
wait, how do you do
struggling.
that? Wait, what?
So you've already
Oh, you're talking about the new one, the new dragon.
yeah, the Dragon Flute song or whatever, I forget what it's
Yeah,
called. Yeah.
I got you.
So yeah, that's something that puts 4/3 rush. What are they called? Dragon Flame somethings or whatever. I forget.
Yeah,
They're called.
Hellfire Dragon.
Yeah, Hellfire Dragons.
Hellflame.
Into the EX area. There are plays set up that way where you can just like set up for your turn 6 play just being I'm pushing up 3 of these dragons. There's 12/9 worth of stats on the board. Deal with it, or get sad. With like only 2 cards, like basically only using 2 cards in your hand. And in some cases, like if one of the discards is a Trail of Light, you've only used technically 1 card, I guess. So there are weird plays like that do come up, and I think are very powerful. That's part of the reason I feel like this is a 1.5 type of tier deck, and I feel like Dragon has good matchups into Haven, and Dragon still can like randomly high roll with Forte Evos, which is ridiculous. That's why I kind of want to put this 1.5. I'm not sold on it being tier 1 though. I don't know how you feel. I think that weird discard inconsistency and stuff is part of the issue of why I don't think it's tier 1. I mean,
I can see both. So yeah, I see both.
okay. I think we're kind of in agreement then, right?
Yeah.
All right, next here. This is for this. What's her name? Tia? Is this Tia?
Yeah, that's like the combo package that
I feel like this is. I mean, once again, because
tier 3.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me just say this much: how good of a card is Zernitra?
Okay, hold on one second. But I just want to preface this before we start discussing this: is that just because this we're using this as the symbol for this archetype of deck, where it's like more of the mid-range like combo deck, doesn't mean like this deck doesn't run Tia. Last time we had people thinking that we said like the Roach deck wouldn't play Rose Gardener, or Queen whatever her name is, which was really weird. But yeah, I think Zernitra is really good, and I think in this meta, like this card is just like good, like at least Tia for the most part is good enough into like the aggro stuff, right?
Or so I was gonna say that Tia is literally a worse Zernitra. It takes up as much mana. Well, yeah, because it takes up 5 mana. Mm-hmm. So it's the same as playing down a Zernitra and tapping it. But it never gets cheaper. Zernitra becomes a 3 mana card once you hit overflow. This is always going to be 5 mana. Effectively.
Yeah.
And the payoff is 1 less stat than Zernitra. It's 1 less attack on the board. I mean, granted, it gets to trade immediately. But I just feel like the combo cards are... Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the combo stuff is insane. I don't know. The Tia is weird because it's a 2-drop, it's a 5-drop. And then it's like, how do you make it a 5-drop? And you have to put on all these cards. And maybe I'm not good enough to play Forest. I don't know. Like I see the Tia and I see a bad card, but it's a legendary. But legendaries can be bad. So maybe I don't know. I personally think this is like tier 3 because I think that this card is not very good. But if my testing makes me come back around, I mean, I'm fine putting it wherever it wants to be.
Yeah, I'm kind of in agreement. I think it's somewhere in here. I just don't know because honestly, I don't have enough testing. Obviously, you don't have a ton of testing, but from what I've seen, it's felt like it's going to be around here.
I have played a set 2 a combo deck one time. I don't know what the actual source for my list was. And it was like playing this card, and I just felt like I didn't have a deck. I felt like I legitimately just did not have it. I was like Lily. You would look at 2, you would see the Tia, you'd be like, "Oh, I got it! I got the entire combo lining up," and then like you put out this like awful board that like had like a bunch of one attack creatures and a single 4/4 or a 5/5. You had the amulet on the board because the Tia is buffed by the Titanias. And then you just have this like really medium board that you felt like you did a lot just to get it out, and it doesn't even pressure your opponent. They kill the only card that has more than one attack on your board, and now you're like board locked with these shitty cards. That was my experience. And that's like 2 games worth of experience, but those 2 games were so unbelievably miserable. I can't imagine that like
Yeah. It's really rough because I think one like between both of us, you have the most Forest experience. I mean, you topped 8 with Forest, but I have barely touched Forest because, like I said before, it's not a craft I really like look to playtest really early on unless I know it's going to be broken. I'm okay with
it's
putting
hard
in,
to playtest.
Yeah, I'm okay with putting this in tier 3 right now. I mean, if any Forest Craft mains watching this video want to like comment below about how stupid we are, that's totally fine. Let us know like what's the best list, like this, you know, this mid-range package of like Forest is actually really good or something. Let us know because, you know, we're okay with being wrong. We just want to know why we're wrong so we can improve, right? But I'm kind of cool with leaving this at tier 3 right now until I hear anything better, because I do think the combo into like the Rose Queen finishing stuff is, I think, the more powerful version of Forest when you're focusing on that as your strategy instead of being more mid-range package stuff, right?
Yeah.
All right, we'll just throw this up here. So
that good?
Yeah.
Goblin turn 1.
Goblin turn 1 busted. So Aggro Abyss has been like in playtesting has been insane. The 2 locals I went to, every time I played against this deck, which was a lot because a lot of people are actually on it, every game felt like a struggle, like unironically. Soul Dealer is just that good. It like I just describe Soul Dealer as like the Forte for Abyss in a way, because it comes onto the board on curve. If they played on curve, it's like one of the most scariest things. If you don't have an answer immediately for it, you probably gonna eat crap for the rest of the game, because after it hits you for 7 on Evo and it blows up your big ward that you put out there, and healing your opponent, it also still has ward at that point, which means you have to get through this 7/6 ward to get through and to like even hit any of the like lower powered like cheap cost followers afterwards. It's a very tough card to deal with, and like I said, if you don't have the answer on turn 5 or on your turn 4 if you went second to deal with this card and you know, get rid of it, you're probably going to lose the game. That's been my experience so far. What about you, Dean?
Haven't really seen it in action. I mean, we know it put up results in Japanese. We know that it's, I mean, the Aggro Abyss is already like spooky. What was it? Set 1 meta, right? I went to locals, and I fought against just like the set 1 deck because we haven't we're playing set 2 next week, so not this week. And I was at 10 health before going to 3 mana. So, you know, more cards that are a little bit better after turn 3, and that's all really all it needed. And Soul Dealer is a hell of a card. Absolutely massive body, like you said, hard to remove, and it has built-in removal as well. So yeah, I can see it being a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, one thing to note too, like set 1 meta, I felt like on average, like getting a turn 6 or 7 kill with Abyss was like what you wanted, and like getting the 6 was more of like the high roll. Now with how low to the ground the deck is, and like generally your biggest cost follower is 5, and it's usually gonna be what's her name? I'm forgetting her name right now, Dean.
Olivia?
No, the Coco and Mimi. Damn it.
That's a 4-drop.
Oh, it's 4 drop. Sorry, never mind. The biggest cost card you have in your deck is 4. I keep thinking plus the Evo, I guess.
Yeah, you kind of no, it's a 6 drop after the Evo.
Oh yeah. But
So you're wrong on both counts.
damn. But that being the heaviest cost follower in your deck usually is like you will win games on turn 5. Like, and I don't want to say it's like very consistent, but maybe like 20 to 30% of your games could end on turn 5 as long as you curve out well and your opponent just like stumbles once at turn 2 or 3, even turn 4 or whatever. A lot of times the game is over at that point. It's the deck is very very aggressive and can consistently do it very very well. Unlike I feel like set 1, it had a little hiccups getting to the finishing turns. This one is just like almost every 4 cards from the deck is like a good hand, opening hand essentially, due to how low the curve is and how it pushes. And like,
Spooky.
yeah, I think this a bit aggro abyss is like what the meta kind of shaped itself around of, because if you can't beat aggro abyss, you're probably not a good enough deck to like compete. That's what I've felt so far, at least. All right.
So 3 very polarizing decks, it seems.
Yeah. Finally, we have Aegis Control here. This deck, I'm sure I've had the most time playing this deck, right? Yeah, I don't know if you touched this deck at all yet, Dean.
Like I said, we did about 2 games with it. We didn't play a lot because the cards were in Japanese, so
Understandable. From my experience so far, I've been testing this deck into the ground. It's been really hard to figure out like how bad this deck is. It has very obvious weaknesses. One being, like I said before, it doesn't have very good burst heal. So if you can burst damage it one turn and then another turn and another turn, you're probably losing every game. Haven's probably losing every game like that. Because all of its heals are increments of 2, and you usually at most a turn heal 4 if you're lucky. Otherwise, it's just like you heal 2 here, you heal 2 here, and you sustain long enough till you can like live and like proc Aegis, or not Aegis.
The heal 10.
The heal 10 from Seraph is like your only one big way to pop off and like heal and restabilize. And it's like it's almost I don't want to say it's a requirement for every game for that to happen, but the games that happen where Seraph pops off, you get the heal 10, you get the 2 free cards. Those games feel like impossible to lose essentially. Unless you're in the mirror, then it's really annoying. But outside of that, like any quick deck that it can't handle, it kind of loses to. Dragon is one of the any version of Dragon. I feel like maybe not Ramp Dragon as much, but definitely discard hybrid deck or whatever is very good into Haven because of how first the ping 2s are very annoying, so it like negates your own heals, but like if they get more pings off than heals than you get when you're playing already, on top of Forte being like the worst card or the best card against Haven, that is, it's really really rough. In my opinion, I think the pure control and your only win condition essentially is Aegis. I think the deck is like, I don't know if I want to say it's tier 1. I think it's like literally the very top of 1.5, peeking into tier 1. Because I think at any moment these two decks here, like the Kage version and the pure Aegis Control version, I think either of them can like get ahead of the other one as far as like being more represented in the meta, I guess. But I think they're relatively both like equal power level overall. But that's what I've felt so far. I do want to just be like, yeah, this deck is busted, because this deck does very well into into like the Leonidas Sword deck and everything like that. Every version of Sword I played against has like lost to this deck one way or another, because if they require Leonidas Banner to go off, you have so many answers in like the pure control Haven for everything that Leonidas isn't a factor for you unless you play poorly and waste your resources. The only time I've ever felt a lot of pressure against Sword is if they play the Gunner Maid package, because sometimes they go off very quickly, and if they happen to play Banner also, it becomes really rough. Like you need to find your board wipe on turn 5 to like stabilize immediately, and usually after that point you're okay. But if they, you can't resolve Themis's Decree on turn 5, sometimes this match gets really, really rough. And like it's still winnable without Themis's Decree on 5, but you really want it on 5, which is at least from the testing I've done. So I'm not really sure where I want to put this. I think I want to put this in tier 1 because I still think it's like right now I think it's the best version of Haven, but I could be wrong. Like I said, I've only had so much testing with Kaguya, and this week I was planning to test a lot more with Kaguya package stuff to like kind of finalize where I think it is. But like I said, I think it could go here or here, just and like swap back and forth.
I respect your decision.
All
right.
Like
I said, without testing, it's like hard for me to say, right?
Yeah.
So you're the one who has more solidified opinions at this point.
All right. Well, here are 2 other decks. Dirt, Dean, you must have some information on Dirt. I am not the Dirt master here.
Dirt, I sleeved a deck in 10 minutes. I watched Daria high roll the shit out of someone. Nice. Fire. Yeah. So okay. Still anti-Merlin. Still anti-Merlin. I don't know how much I want to like even talk about that. Should I talk about that at all?
Go ahead, because honestly, I've actually played. Before you get into your rant, I built a deck, dirt deck actually, that I put Merlin in. It's not like the normal dirt list. It's a little bit wonky. But after putting Merlin in that list, I was like, wow, Merlin actually sucks. So I might be in the same boat as you. I think maybe set 1 Merlin at some count might have been okay because of like you can get 6 burn damage immediately essentially. But I think now there's so much better stuff to be doing in Dirt that like Merlin feels like a wasted card slot.
Yeah, so what I did was I just took the old deck, I removed the Lucifers, I removed the Demon Flame Mage, those cards suck. I added Daria's in, a couple Surefire Bullets, Pascals, and the Remy, whatever it is. And then the rest of the deck was like, the other cards were all the same. Erasmus, you can flip off a Daria to have, you can flip over the Ancient Alchemist. There's double execution in the deck. You could play triple because you're afraid of Leonidas. You don't really have answers for it. But the Merlin package, the reason it's so horrendously bad is you play spells to copy, and then you get into these weird like mana curves where like how in Shadowverse there's like expected outcomes for every turn. And there's like expected curves in like the cards you include, right? And so I've seen people, they play like Rimewind, or they play like the what's it called? The Demonic Strike, or they play Fire Chain or whatever, and they say like, I play Merlin and I grab this, then I play this. And the problem is that like all of the curves that you do to have that turn are like terrible. And on turn 3, you usually want to spend turns 1 and 2 putting down stacks. If you go first on turn 3, you would like to Evo the guy who gives you a stack of 2, because your entire lifeblood of the deck is built around the stacks. And if you don't have stacks, you don't have a deck. At least that's how I feel. So when you put down Merlin, you're not progressing your stack and you're not using a stack. So you're not doing what the deck is supposed to. And then you add a card to your hand. You can add Golem to Protection. But wouldn't you rather just play 4 Golem Protection and then have it in your hand? And then it's a better card to rip off the Daria. So it's just like, it's awful. And then if you grab Rimewind, like let's say you grab Rimewind with your Merlin, that's on turn 3. Well, the Merlin gets removed. You have this 3-mana spell in your hand, but you're going into turn 4. If you play that card, you now need a 1-mana card to help curve out your mana. Like nothing curves out anymore, right? Like it's just terrible. In Spell Chain, Merlin is insane. A 10 out of 10 card. In Dirt, when I'm wanting to tempo out and I want every turn to be as impactful as possible, I think that Daria has actually felt pretty good. Yeah, you play open-handed, but the fact is that like on turn, you just continuously play out your hand until you don't have one, and you just play a more aggressive curve than you did before. Because previously, my problem is like at a certain point, I just wanted to have bomb after bomb after bomb. And so I was playing a bunch of like 7 drops and like cards that curved into the late game. But now I can play a very low to the ground curve, a couple bombs, and just refill my hand once, and hopefully that's enough to get there. And I would put that at like tier 2, because tier 2 to tier 1.5. It's like definitely it's better than what Forest is so far in testing. But I do feel like you want to play open handed at a certain point. And please just like try it without the Merlin.
Okay, so everything you've said, I think I 100% agree with you. I've actually, the list I was messing around with, because I was just trying to make a rune list that I liked to take to locals, not necessarily to like go to the regional with or anything like that, but something fun that's different I can play with. After testing it, I thought more about the list and like the shortcomings of it, and how Merlin wasn't actually doing any work I wanted it to do because it just didn't feel good. I actually started considering like, actually I got into a state of the game where like I have no hand. Like my hand is like 2 cards and I need something that can generate lots of value very quickly. And Daria was like the go-to answer to that. And Daria seems, I haven't tested it completely yet, but Daria seems like the answer I was looking for also.
I watched Daria on turn 8. It was turn 8 or 9. He was able to summon an Erasmus with it. But it flipped over execution when there was like this giant ass dragon card on the board. Erasmus, Ancient Alchemist, and then like an amulet. And I was like, that is insane. That is actually insane. So like, yeah, when you put 3 counts of all of your good cards in the deck, Daria is usually going to feel pretty insane. I mean, like you could still low roll, but like you said, it's just that 5 extra cards when the game, like when the game has already gone past what you want to go to.
Yeah, because it very much feels like Dirt Rune wants to be like the mid-range deck and just play everything it can on curve, max mana, right? Like you were saying,
yeah,
for the most part. And so you do actually get to that point where like some of your cards don't generate much advantage for you other than being like really good statted on board. And so like you get to that turn where you're like, damn, I need answers now, and I don't have very good ways to search for the answers. Oh, here's Daria. I have 5 new cards to play with, and 2 of them are now like for this turn are like 5 less play points, right? I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
And specifically you can't do amulets, which kind of sucks. It means it doesn't work with Junos, but such as life.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think it's for sure at least minimum tier 2. I think there could be an argument that it's tier 1.5. But I would need to test more and see it more personally before I can write off on 1.5.
Well, that's why I put it in tier 2, because I haven't tested it enough. I just watched a single game where Daria got resolved and I said, damn, that looked good. that was just kind of my response. Is I watched a Daria get flipped once because I didn't get to test it, and I said, ooh, that was pretty powerful.
I can see that. All right, our final deck here is Spell Chain, whether it be D-Shift or like some kind of burn package stuff. I mean, what are your thoughts on that, Dean?
Rimewind is both like an insane card and a bad card at the same time. I don't fully know. Like, I feel like it definitely got better. I feel like the removal cards got better. The control package got better. I mean, technically, like, do you still have a good sword matchup? I guess that's something I'd have to test. I think it has to be better than it was before, and it was already good. Or maybe it's about as the same. I don't know. What do you think? What do you think? Because I don't actually fully know how to think about this. I think the D-Shift is still telegraphed, and that's, like, both bad. Sometimes you get horrendous hands, but that, like, comes with every class. Maybe it's more so this because you have like half of the deck you want to see early and half the deck you want to see late. But we got draw drop. We got the draw drop guy. Craig. We got Craig.
Yeah, Craig has been very
kind
good.
Of insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't tested D-Shift at all with the new cards yet, but from like theory crafting overall, Rimeward is such a good and important card for the deck. Or Runecraft in general in this meta, because it answers Soul Dealer, like an on-curve Soul Dealer. It answers Leonidas if they try to remove their own Leonidas by attacking into something that you left on board. You just bounce it away and it goes to the bottom of their deck. And not only did they lose the Evo, they lost their Amulet as well, which is really big. I feel like that's the only way it can fight.
Wait, what?
What? Because when they attack with Leonidas, like you can bottom deck it.
The card?
Oh wait, you're right. I'm so dumb. I keep forgetting that it's non-Evo only.
yeah. It top decks, by the way, not bottom decks.
Oh, but it bottom decks at 10 doesn't it? Oh no, it's top.
No,
It's,
it bounces the hand. It
oh
bounces the
oh,
hand,
ban
and then
hand
it.
then top deck. Okay. Wait, is it top
Which
deck?
we were
Is it bottom
arguing.
deck?
No, I think pretty sure it's top.
I don't believe you. You need to look this up now. But
Also, here's a
yeah.
question for you with pronunciation. How did you pronounce it before I said rhyme wind?
Same way, rhyme wind.
Damn it! I always called it Rimy wind. Until
Rimy
somebody
wind.
told me
Oh, maybe. I don't know.
it's rhyme wind.
All right.
Rhyme wind.
Oh, it is on top of their deck. Well, actually, yeah. Is this translated correctly?
It's
Whatever.
correct. Yeah.
Hmm.
We were debating if you fight dragon with this now, is your counter to them just bouncing like if they put down any follower, you just keep putting on top of their deck so they can't draw the forte.
That's actually pretty funny. I mean, kind of basically. But now that I'm thinking about this again, this probably has a really rough matchup into sword without searching out the execution, right? You have to search out an execution.
Wait, you have the time though, because it's not
Yeah.
like the problem. So the problem I had when I played with like a one of execution into sword was Merlin. Using Merlin to search execution was a very low tempo play. It meant that I wasn't removing the turn 3, and then the banner would come down just buff the board, and I would die. So I couldn't actually afford to Merlin to like remove the banner, and the banner was actually hard to get rid of because it was too good. Rune is fine just not putting guys on board, so Leonidas never can crash.
Mm-hmm.
It's also fine because it has more time to go find it, because the banner is not coming down on 4, the banner's coming down on 6 to 7.
Mm-hmm.
You can just get the execution. Like you've got all the time in the world.
I think the big thing about Rhyme Wind too, though, like for this, is that it answers turn 4 Soul Dealer so well.
Yeah,
which I think is really big. Yeah.
And then you have like all the removal tools you already have. So yeah, I mean, Rune has probably got something up there in like 1.5 to 2, where it's just like the same weakness it had before. The lethal line is a little telegraphed. You've got some really awkward hands where you're spending mana to draw, and sometimes that's not good enough. I do think that Craig is insane. I think it's actually, dare I say, better than Penguin Wizard.
It's really hard to tell. I think Craig is really insane, though.
The reason I say it's better is because Penguin Wizard sticking for multiple turns is good, but some decks would just ignore him and you die. Like, right? It's like the Penguin Wizard tapping and discarding a spell every turn is cool, but you just die. And Craig is able to filter as many cards on the turn he's played, but then also trade for 3. And sometimes that's really big.
Yeah, it definitely plays better into like the more aggressive matchups, right?
But I mean, ultimately you play both, so it's like,
yeah.
I'm
not super sure where I want to drop this at. I do feel like you're right. There's probably something that pushes this into 1.5 that we haven't seen yet. But I'm kind of chill with putting this in tier 2 if you are.
Yeah, 2 to like, yeah. I mean, I think that like it and Dirt could both be like 1.5.
Yeah, Rune in general has like the opportunity to be there, I think. All right, so I think
the official tier list.
The official 100%.
Definitely, there may have been quite a few times I and Kit both said, I have not played this deck. So
don't look at us for those. But I feel really confident in our tier 1 and 1.5 as their placements generally. I think generally it's this kind of almost rock, paper, scissors meta here at the top with Leonidas loses to Haven but beats out Abyss, I feel like. But I mean, Abyss is like one of the biggest wild cards of the set, because if they curve out well into like their optimal things, like a Goblin on 1, Mini Soul Devil on 2, into like Evo the Ghost Generator thing on 3 or whatever, is like insane stuff like that. This deck is just like the wild factor of tier 1, where it can kind of beat both decks, but it also just kind of loses to them too once it gets too late into the game, I feel like.
That's always aggro, right?
Yeah, because
it was the same problem with like set 1 Abyss, but that's why I think when I was talking to some people, I was like, Kit's talking about the aggro Abyss being good, but I'm at 10 health on turn 2, so it's like, what, you just kill people but the same speed but better. Like,
Yeah, I think the consistency went up like a lot more, and I do think like turn 5 kills like on your, you go to 5 play points, you evo soul dealer, and then you play like another 3 drop fall or whatever, or like a burn spell, right? And that's more than enough to end the game. That's like 10 out of like 10 damage basically on turn 5. So it's been a very wacky deck to play against. It was the first deck I tested with proxies, and that like 2 days of testing was just like the most wacky games ever of my opponent just randomly dying on turn 4, turn 5, like, and or just like they're scooping on turn 4 because just they don't have an answer and they die next turn to like everything. So yeah.
yeah, I can see it.
Yeah.
I mean, I see that as being like an extremely strong deck. You just slightly open bat against it, the game is over. Yeah, I can agree.
Yeah. I think one of the big things that people, when they're deck building, they need to really consider is how do they answer a turn on curve turn 4 soul dealer. If you don't have a readily answer for that in your deck probably isn't good enough to compete like and win events consistently. You have to just basically dodge every abyss player or have them not curve out soul dealer on 4. I've seen
this might sound a little rude, but never forget that we have 20-man regionals.
Okay, listen. All right, anything is possible. All right, don't let your memes be dreams. Just because we say your deck sucks doesn't mean you're not going to win. It's just our opinion and our opinion alone, and yeah, we're just sharing it out there for people who want to discuss this stuff, I guess.
But I do think that, like, yeah, I think you're correct. If usually,
yeah, like every time I've built a deck that's like testing right now, the first thing I ask myself is how many answers to a turn 4 soul dealer do I have in my list, and is it reasonable for me to have one of those answers in time? Otherwise, like, soul dealer is just too good of a card for Abyss right now. All right, I think that is it for us, right? This is the official, most tested, most proven tier list ever. You refer to this tier list all the time, every time, because it's the best tier list
even
in
a
world.
month. Yeah, in a month you look at it too.
Yep, exactly. But honestly, if you guys disagree and you think we're whack jobs and we have the worst tier list ever out there, leave comments below, please. We love hearing from the community. We love being told we're wrong with reason, not just you're stupid and you're wrong. We'd like an explanation why, because we're always out here learning, striving to be better, and striving to get the community better as well. Because if everyone gets better, then everyone levels up together. I think that's kind of it for us. You have anything to add before we peace out here, Dean?
No, that's all. Thanks for sticking with us, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, like we're at to, like, I think the recording of this, we're at 740 subscribers. Honestly, thank you guys so much. Dean had assumed we were going to get subscribers, but I'm always thinking our stuff is garbage, so I'm always surprised whenever we get people. I don't know.
It's been slow. Yeah, it's been slow, and we're still working on it. But
yeah. But yeah, just thank you to all our subscribers. And if you're at this point and you're still listening, what are you doing? You should subscribe to us if you haven't. But besides that, I guess we'll call it quits here. We'll hope to see you guys in our next video. Later, everyone.